This is What's Left America, and I'm Chris Tritico.
I'm Andi Georgsson.
And I'm James Campbell.
And I'm Chris Bell.
What's Left America is proudly produced by Left Out Media, and it's brought to you by the generosity of our sponsors and friends, just like the Houston Federation of Teachers. That's Local 2415 AFL-CIO, and we hope someday friends just like you. Today on the show, we're going to cover two big topics: Kavanaugh, the day the Me Too movement died, and the political court. In the show, of course, without a left field. Let's get right into it. Kavanaugh, the day the Me Too movement died. President Trump last week, right before the vote, while we were on that pause, that we'll talk about that in a minute, mocked Dr. Christine Ford at a rally. I think it was in Arizona. I can't remember. Mocked her, mocked the Me Too movement, and suggested that the Me Too movement is nothing more than male bashing. I thought that was disgusting. With only the three holdouts left, we paused for 1 week so that the FBI could investigate.
We paused for 3 days.
Well, yeah, but it was a 1 week pause till the vote. And I want to remind everybody of something I said last week, that is this pause and this FBI investigation just something so that the holdouts can have cover to come in and vote yes? And I was right.
Yeah, you were right, and you deserve credit for that. I remember feeling hopeful that because it seemed so obvious that the man had done what he had been accused of doing, the FBI would have found that out, and it would have given the Republicans cover to let him go and go to the next person on the list. But in fact, I was not nearly cynical enough.
Right. Well, they would have found it out had they actually been able to investigate.
But you also plugged in your experience as a criminal defense attorney and realized that FBI investigations can go on for years to get everything that they need to build a solid case. And I was hopeful too. I really thought that it wouldn't be that difficult to go actually talk to some of the people who had been identified as being present when some of these things occurred. And at some point, the public might even be allowed to know what the FBI did and what they found and what the senators were reading in that one volume that they had locked away in that
vault,
in
the skiff,
the secret room. Mm-hmm. And so, but we don't now. But
we will.
It appears. But I thought it was pretty clear the fix was in when on Tuesday they were reporting that the FBI could be all finished up with this investigation by Wednesday.
Well, and the reports were coming out.
They didn't even need a whole week.
The White House, McGahn was in charge of this, and he was actively telling the president to stop saying the FBI can do whatever they want, because he was not allowing it. He was not allowing them to interview anybody they wanted. And, quote, he said to the president, you do not want the FBI talking to anybody they want. Not only does it break precedent, it might destroy this nominee's ability to get on the bench.
Yeah, so I was not hopeful at all from the beginning. I said that this was fated complete because it's a zero-sum game that we're in now. It's about winning. It's not about fairness. It's not about optics. It's about winning, and that's what the Republicans are interested in. And so to have an FBI investigation, all that did was delay the game. I think you talked about the Me Too movement, and I think what senators now have to ask themselves is whose side they're going to be on, especially women senators like Susan Collins. And I had some hope that Susan Collins would vote the right way and do the right thing, and that Jeff Flake would do the right thing, since he was the one who was attacked at the elevator and it seemed like he was sympathetic to it. But that was all a snow job. And Susan Collins, in a state that supports a woman's right to choose,
heavily,
really didn't have any opposition running against her. And these people are so afraid that they're going to get primary that they can't even do the right thing, and that's a sad thing.
I heard someone call Jeff Flake Hamlet on the Beltway. What should I do? To be or not to be, to vote no, to vote yes. Like he was wrestling with his conscience. And then he went on television and he said, the question was asked, if you were running, how would you vote? Well, I would just vote yes. I thought he got a lot of criticism for that, but he was talking about a political reality.
Yeah, right.
In fact, the fact of the matter is he is not running again. And
except for president.
Well, that's ridiculous. It is a ridiculous idea. Not that he would run, but that he would have a chance. But he had so little to lose, and he wrote a book about Trump and what a ridiculous president Trump is. And it seemed like he had some. It was not, as so many people like to say about so many things, a profile in courage.
Well, can we digress a moment and talk about something James said about winning? Because that's what it's been about, and I've talked about it in the program before, that's what it's been about for the Republicans for as long as I can remember. And the problem is that the Democrats just failed to catch on. They made it about winning a long, long time ago, and the rest of our adult lives are going to be impacted by it.
GOP
the courts
did.
have been impacted by it. Almost every state legislature in the country has been impacted by that philosophy, and they were smart about the way they went about it. And it's absolutely screwed us.
You're going to want to go back in your What's Left America archive and listen to me say that very thing. The Republicans were playing the long game.
Right.
They had a lineup of court appointees. They didn't start with the Supreme Court. They started with the lower courts. They brought these people up through the ranks, and they hit it from every side. So they've packed the courts. They've cracked and packed the districts through gerrymandering. They've done the voter suppression deal, and Kavanaugh, coming on the court now, is going to approve every voter suppression law. In every way, the Republicans have the ability not just to win, but to keep winning, to hold on to power.
And what really worries me, I think we may have just gotten played again, because everything was pointing in the direction of a Democratic tidal wave as we head toward November. And this, I know we're probably going to talk about it a little bit more, but I think the Democrats have mangled this with Kavanaugh. Absolutely mangled it.
We're coming to that. But let's don't get ahead of ourselves. What happens when the investigative reporting catches up with this? And it will. And the investigative reporters are going to get all these witnesses. That report is going to get out of that vault, and we're going to find out what little the FBI was allowed to do by Don McGahn. And we're going to get these witnesses are going to start talking, and it's going to get out that Kavanaugh. There's a report out already that Kavanaugh was actively trying to squash or squelch the Ramirez story. And there's tweets out about it. And what's going to happen when all this comes out? And he's sitting on the Supreme Court.
So that is something that the Democrats must think about. But Christopher Kroons, who was set with Flake when he was making his decision, has already said that that's not on the table. That's not something that they are thinking about. And even as Democrats think about the issues to run on, I don't think impeaching him or impeaching the president is a winning issue, because
that's what I've been saying.
What Trump is on a stump right now, already using this against the Democrats, the whole protest. And so the Democrats, I don't know what it is, but I hear this Dr. Ray Perryman always talks about the Democrats don't have a turnout problem. They have a message problem. And the Democrats don't know how to message like the Republican. Chris, right now, I'm trying to figure out, what are the Democrats running on right now? What are they running on? Have you heard a message that resonates?
Go into the archives.
With
We've
you?
had this discussion so many times on this podcast. I would like to know what the message is. At some point, I came to the conclusion that the Democrats don't do well with a national message. And what has been working in these individual districts is that the candidates are tailoring the message for the district. And that's the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. And that's why I don't blame Beto O'Rourke for not asking Barack Obama to come down and campaign for him. He doesn't think that's going to do him any good. Mm-hmm. I tend to kind of think that he may be right about that. That's fine. So our messaging issue, we do, I agree with you, need an overarching message. But I also think that we've been doing well in the primaries by tailoring our message to each individual to where we are.
Well, I think the message for women.
I worry. I mean, I think you're right, but I worry in the general, is that message going to resonate with the general public, more particularly those crossover votes, those women allegedly who are out there who.
So you're saying that it may work in a particular district, in a particular state, but if the nation as a whole doesn't understand that the Democrats stand for something, it's going to actually backfire on the candidates in the.
Andy, I think you're right about the individual districts, but as far as nationwide, I think the message coming from the Republicans for women is quite clear. We don't give a fuck about you.
Right.
And so that is going to hurt, and I think a lot of women are coming off the sidelines. They had already begun long ago to come off the sidelines, and probably even more so now because of what we've witnessed the last couple of weeks.
And there's plenty of reporting out that college-educated women have bolted from the GOP and are moving in droves to the Democratic Party. And if the Democratic Party has any sense about them at all, they're going to welcome that demographic with open arms. But they need a message for that, and this is the message right here. The GOP just slapped you right in the face with what they did here, and you turn that into a message, and you can bring women into the Democratic Party in droves as long as you can take that message and turn it into a long-term strategy to keep them in the party.
Okay, so I agree with that, but I think the wild card in all of this are white women. And Alex Grinnell wrote a really good column, and I'm going to read a bit of it. It says, "But the people who scare me the most are the mothers, sisters, and wives of those young men, because my stupid uterus still holds out some insane hope of solidarity." And then she goes on to say, "We're talking about white women, the same 53% who put their racial privilege ahead of their second-class gender status in only 2 elections, and that was in 1952 and in 1996. That's the only time white women have broken from the Republican Party and voted for a Democratic president." So, she's basically making the point, Chris. I hear people talking about the polling and defection of white Republican women. And what I'm suggesting is that's not going to happen.
Yeah, we keep hoping for that, but it is a reality that white women tie their power to white men, and if white men lose power, they lose power. I never thought that people really thought about it in those, like a woman would actually think about it in those terms, but it's hard to it's hard to deny. Even if no one's thinking about that explicitly, why would 51% of white women vote for Donald Trump?
No, there's really
no. That's a rhetorical question, and I mean that you're right. Why?
I mean, well, it's not. No, I mean it's a question that has an answer, and I think the answer is that
they're tied to that.
Yes, I mean there's a power structure, and at the end of the day, white women are the beneficiaries of a white patriarchy. My God, we sound like we're in some gender studies class here, and I don't mean for it to necessarily sound like that, but somebody else give me a different interpretation of the way.
But I think that's the only thing that explains Susan Collins voting the way she did. At least I give Lisa Murkowski an A for actually going through a thoughtful process and coming to the decision.
If you watch them, both of them, Lisa Murkowski was always truly troubled. I don't think Susan Collins ever intended to vote no.
Because Lisa Murkowski comes from a state that has the highest rate of sexual assault in the country, and it happens to women who are Native Alaskan more than anybody.
Susan Collins stood on the floor of the Senate and said the Me Too movement is real, it matters, it is needed, and it's long overdue. She added that she found Dr. Blasey's testimony to be sincere, painful, and compelling. The witnesses provided no corroborating evidence. Corroboration is not a requirement. No shit, Senator, because it doesn't. You don't have to have corroboration to prove a sexual assault, ever. You've never had to have that. One witness is all that it takes to prove a sexual assault in a criminal case, and the standard is higher in a criminal case to convict somebody than it is to put a damn justice on the Supreme Court. I'm sick and tired of hearing that.
I know, but let's back up for a moment, because if the arc is winning, if that's what we're kind of talking about today, let's look at how the Democratic Party chose to handle this. This woman, Dr. Blasey Ford, went to her member of Congress, Anna Eshoo, and reported that this had happened to her. Now, I don't really completely understand where it went from that point, but that was early on in the process. So a member of Congress, a Democratic member of Congress, knew that these allegations were hanging out there. But instead of immediately starting to craft a strategy and a plan as to how they could use that to sink this nomination, instead they sat on it until the last minute. That looked horrible in many people's eyes.
That's what I was talking about last week.
And then made it all about trying to talk about his record on choice and his record on this, none of which was ever going to make any difference whatsoever in terms of impacting votes. If this had been out there earlier, I think it would have put people like Susan Collins in a much more difficult position. But to cast all these aspersions upon your own trump card is a little bit ridiculous.
That is exactly,
and why don't we think more strategically in the Democratic Party? I don't understand that.
And you asked me last week at the end of my out of left field, that's exactly what I was talking about.
I thought that
when I said that you asked me, so you don't think that they should have leaked it in the letter, and it's exactly what Chris Bell just said, is that by dropping the bomb the way that the Democratic Party did, they didn't give time for anyone to think about this, to investigate it properly. It should have been done much earlier so that a proper investigation could have been done. And I get it. Dr. Ford said she didn't want her name out there, but her name was out there. Her name was
She had gone to her member of Congress to report
and her name was
even
always,
if they didn't want to use her name right away.
And it was always going to be out there. And the senator should have gone to her and said, look, I know you don't want your name out there. It's going to get out there. So we need to do this right.
We don't have a ruthlessness that the GOP has. I mean, they are cutthroat. They don't give a damn. They'll roll over anybody, and they would have rolled over a victim of a sexual assault without a problem if it had been to their benefit. I think that the Democrats' hands were tied. If we're going to be the party that respects women, then we have to respect a woman's confidentiality. Unfortunately, you can't explain that we told her that we would maintain her anonymity. Dianne Feinstein tried to explain it. She is not the person that I look to when it comes to somebody. If I needed somebody to craft a spy, a caper, a complicated strategy.
Caper.
I don't think it wouldn't be Dianne Feinstein. I think they tried to do the right thing.
But I don't buy that.
But Andy,
I don't buy that. I think that Dianne Feinstein knew the entire time that Dr. Ford's anonymity was going to get blown, and they held that letter until they strategically thought that they could kill it.
Oh, you do think it was a strategy?
Absolutely, I think it was a strategy.
But Andy,
I don't think it was a strategy. I think that they would have gotten shot down. Whether they had leaked it early or if they had leaked it late.
If they had, it didn't have to be a leak. That's the whole point. If they had told Dr. Ford, look, thank you for coming forward. We can't maintain your anonymity because it's never going to be maintained. You're the one who called the damn Washington Post. They're investigating you. She testified to that. She called the Washington Post tip line. They were coming to her. This was not going to be maintained. It was going to get out there, and they should have just set her down and said, thank you for coming forward. We have to turn this over to the committee. It is going to get out there, and we're going to get ahead of this.
Well,
and we're going to do everything we can to help you.
If this had happened before he was the nominee.
Or the day he was nominated.
If he was still on the short list, and that's when she got it, I'll concede that.
But let's talk about ruthlessness. Because
let's talk about that.
You're exactly right. We're not. But maybe we're going to have to be a little bit more ruthless if we're ever going to really win. And this is the historical nature of the Democratic Party. You can go back,
we used to be
50,
ruthless.
60 years. I'll never forget.
LBJ knew how to be ruthless.
Never forget reading after the Democrats had been in the majority in the House for 30 or some odd years. And Republicans were always outraising them, always had a money advantage. And suddenly Tony Coelho from California woke up and said, hey, guys, we're in the majority. Maybe these businesses have to start contributing to the Democratic Party as well. And of course, they started going to him. And of course, they did contribute because they're not idiots. But why did the light bulb not go off any sooner? Because we just don't think that way.
Yeah.
And something about that's going to have to change, or we're going to continue to get our asses
If they'd have
kicked.
brought this up at the beginning and let this filter up throughout the hearing, it would have had a proper investigation, and all of these things that came up about him in the very end would have come up at the beginning, and they'd have had time to bring them up properly.
I don't know how we would have gotten a
My
proper
question
investigation.
Is, why
we don't
are we hashing over this.
We don't control the FBI.
Because that's why we do this, to make ourselves feel better on Sundays.
Right. All right. So let's look ahead. Let's look ahead. Let's move ahead and look ahead. So the Democrats were polling up throughout this Kavanaugh thing and until the last week. And then the Republicans just, man, they shored everything up.
But you know what, Chris? I have no confidence in polls anymore.
Well, that's all we have, though.
I get that, but every poll leading into the 2016 election.
I understand that. I get all that, but that's all we have is polls. So we're going to talk about these
Trump,
polls.
Trump will win.
We will stipulate to the fact that polls are useless.
Okay, but all we have is these polls. So the Democrats were polling way up, and it looked like they were going to kill the Republicans in the midterm until the last week. The Republicans shored it all up. And now it's a dead heat. Is that bump a real bump, or is that now that Kavanaugh's in, is that going to go away? Or the Republicans now they've won and it's over?
Are you saying that
is the Democratic anger going to come back?
Well, wait a minute. Are you saying that because Kavanaugh's in, it's the Republicans are like, well, we won, we'll stay home? Or are you saying that the Democrats are so discouraged that they will stay home?
That's the question. I don't know. I'm asking both those questions.
Well, you got to get up really early to make Donald Trump look good. And sadly,
he looked good.
Well, you got to do more than get up early.
He probably had his best day.
You got to give Donald
yesterday.
credit. He had a pretty good week. He got the whatever you're going to call the new trade bill signed. He had Kavanaugh got through, and it was such a big week for him. The story in the New York Times was just about his tax fraud was just blown right by. Yeah. I mean, it was a pretty good week for him.
That'll be coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it got a little play. But I think you make a really good point about where does the enthusiasm stand now
and
for the
there's
Democrats.
3 weeks.
And I think that when I saw Trump at a rally in Mississippi, and he started making the case, and I'm going to go back to Kavanaugh, and he brought up your sons, your brothers, your fathers are in danger, and that right there was a rallying cry for the Republican Party. And basically what he's done is been able to use Kavanaugh to further demonize the Democrats, but also fire up that base. And not only the base, but just think, if you are a moderate Republican and somebody says, your son might be the next one that this happens to if you let the Democrats win. That right there is a rallying cry.
Why does that resonate?
People.
Why does that resonate?
It doesn't.
You would not believe some of the stuff I was getting by way of emails and stuff.
I'm not saying that it doesn't. I'm wondering why. But let me just say, and then you, Chris, you're after me. Chris Bell, you're after me. When Ann Richards won, why did she win?
Here?
Do you remember Clayton? What was his name?
Clayton Williams.
Clayton Williams. He said rape was like a rainstorm. You see it coming.
No,
we'll just relax and enjoy it.
I don't think it was a rainstorm, but that's close enough.
Yeah, whatever.
Close
the
enough.
weather, some bad weather,
some
bad weather's coming. You just okay.
And Lindsey Graham said, "I'm sorry, call the cops." He told one woman that who said that she was raped.
Yeah, well, we know. Oh, yeah, he's an asshole, like Clayton Williams. But that turned the tide for Ann Richards, and she became the governor. I mean, right? She was a Democrat, but this time
that was at a more reasonable time.
1980 something was not a more reasonable time.
Well,
we
I think people
we weren't even post-racial then.
We're not post-racial now. But anyway, you go, Bill. Why did it make a difference then,
I
but
hope
it doesn't
you're
make
right.
a difference now?
And I think what you're saying, Andy, may be the saving grace, given what we were talking about before. Women are completely turned off by the Republican Party and will probably come out in droves, and hopefully that will offset. But I also think James is right, that lit a spark that was not there previously. The most of the anti-Trump Republicans were down in the dumps and staying on the sidelines. And suddenly this gave them something to fire up about, because there's a level of meanness in that party that none of us really understand. Some of the stuff that I was being sent by conservative friends who keep me on their list for some reason, and by way of pictures, Christine Blasey's Ford picture from high school, the way we all look somewhat awkward, and try to imagine that he would possibly have wanted to be with this woman.
That's what they said about Anita Hill.
Are you that fucking stupid? I mean, that I can exactly imagine how you would take advantage of somebody like that. But that's the mindset, and it has lit that spark among those folks. James is exactly right, and I'm a little bit horrified.
Well, it didn't light a spark for Megyn Kelly, and I think we're going to talk about this in a little while. But here's a woman who was sexually harassed, basically out of her job, and she had a temper tantrum over the very notion that someone would impugn Brett Kavanaugh's character.
Who did?
Megyn Kelly on television. She got so angry. And so I thought, okay, well, first of all, every woman, if she hasn't been sexually assaulted, or there was some attempt of sexual assault, she's had something, whether it was just like creepy. Everybody knows the creepy guy. Everyone's dealt with the creepy guy.
Why are you looking at me when you say that?
I absolutely did not look at you. I looked at James Campbell. No. I take it back.
Well,
You're the opposite
doesn't think I'm a creepy guy.
Well, she likes creepy guys. No, you're the opposite of a creepy guy. I don't even want to say that on the air. That's not even funny. Every woman knows what it's like to have to be afraid for some reason because they're walking across campus at night by themselves or for whatever reason. And you would think that would be enough. But here's a woman who, talked about her sexual harassment at her job, left Fox News because of it, and still can't find a way to believe that a woman making a fully credible claim could be right, couldn't defend her.
You forget that Brett Kavanaugh
said about women, and who are you going to side with on this? Are you going to side with the patriarchy, or are you going to side with women who really have stories about actual sexual assault?
But you forget,
it's so complicated.
What you all forget is that before he became a judge, Brett Kavanaugh was a Republican operative high up in the Bush administration.
Right.
And I listened at the Trip Fest last week. I listened to Karl Rove and Dan Bartlett and Mark McKinnon and Margaret Spelling, excuse me, the one person I really know. I can't remember her last name. But talk about him and say they absolutely cannot believe it and wouldn't give it any credence whatsoever because they knew him and they liked him. I'm sure Megyn Kelly probably knew him. He was probably a regular on Fox News back in the day.
But that's just the thing.
They made it completely personal is what I'm saying from their standpoint.
Yeah, I mean,
which is absolutely ridiculous because usually you don't go to your friends and say, hey, there's just something you ought to know about me.
Yeah. I'm kind of rapey. That's a good point.
So, but the week before the Kavanaugh was confirmed, there was a poll out. 82% of Democrats say the midterms are very important. Just 60% of people under 30 felt that they were important. 61% of Latinos felt they were important, and 65% of independents felt they were important. And so, if you're only getting 60% of the people under 30, how does this affect the Democrats? And how do you, if this isn't going to get the younger people energized, what is?
Well, That's a difficult question to answer because millennials are kind of the sweet spot, and you have various voter initiatives happening among millennials, and some of them are conservative. And so, I think what the Democrats have to figure out is how to mobilize people of color, especially African Americans or Latinos. They must get to millennials, college-age kids, but they also have to look at those potential crossover votes, Chris Tritico, because that, I think, is another sweet spot. That blue wave is not going to happen unless people feel more enthusiasm about this. And I don't think, for Republicans, Kavanaugh is an issue. For the large majority of Democrats, I think Kavanaugh may have been an issue, but I think what the Democrats are waiting to hear, and I go back to it again, is a message that's going to resonate.
For crying out loud, if this is not an issue for the entire every person who votes Democrat, I don't know what you're waiting for. This changes everything we believe in.
This has the potential to change generationally things that Democrats believe in, because Brett Kavanaugh is going to be on the court a very long time. And yes, that should resonate, but I don't feel that, Chris. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I think younger women will wake up to the choice issue finally. It's been a big problem for at least the last 20 years. The law has been in place. They haven't had to think about it. Now with the court changing, that's going to be more of a reality to them, and something we haven't talked about in a long time, and I think is going to come back in the forefront as we close toward Election Day, is guns. I think young people understand the gun issue better than adults. I think they're much more realistic about it, and I think they're fed up.
And that's Chris, I think when you talk about abortion and a woman's right to choose, this isn't about women that have wealth and the means to get an abortion. This is about those women, and it's always been about those women who don't have the means. And if the Democrats aren't reaching out to those communities where this is really going to affect women of lower income, they aren't, they're going to lose them. They aren't hearing that.
Here's the deal. I think that maybe women of our generation, a little bit younger, a little bit older, think that the sun rises and sets on Roe v. Wade. But younger people know about Plan B. They can go into any pharmacy. Well,
currently,
not any pharmacy in the Bible Belt necessarily, but they can get a Plan B, a morning after pill. They have other means. Maybe they don't understand how important it is for them to have the right to have an abortion. They feel like they can take care of it after the fact. And believe you me, they know about it. They understand it. But what they don't understand is they're going to be coming for your Plan B too.
Right, that's what I was going to say.
They're already coming.
They don't understand that, though.
Takes me right into the last point I want to make on this, and then we're going to move into the second topic, is the 2020 race.
You mean we haven't gotten to the second topic?
We haven't gotten to the second topic yet. The 2020 race.
So we were there.
Nope, the 2020 race. As this court starts hitting those top hot button issues, abortion, Plan B, the Affordable Care Act, the gerrymandering issues, the voting rights issues, they're going to hit those issues in the next 2 years. As they hit those issues in the next 2 years, what's the impact on the 2020 race when they hit those issues? What's the impact?
That's a very good question. So
that's why I asked it.
So, and if I may step up and try to answer that. So I think there are going to be several issues that are important that are kind of under the radar. One is pre-existing conditions, and the Republicans trying to get rid of that, and that's happening with lawsuits in several states, including the great state of Texas. And, that is an issue that Democrats can run on in protecting that. Republicans out there saying, we're going to protect you. We aren't going to take away that right. I think that's going to be an important issue. I think abortion rights will be an important issue. But I also think for older people and those reliable voters who are in my age group, they're going to be concerned about, okay, if the Republicans maintain power, what does that mean for my Social Security? What does it mean for my Medicare?
And they approve when the Republicans approve those block grants to the states and take Medicare away from the federal government, let the states start doling that out the way they want.
I don't know why I think Medicare and Social Security are that's not what we have to worry about. I do think that I should not think that I'm going to have Social Security to depend on, but I think those are the two things that are the least of our concerns. What's gonna kill those two programs is the debt that we're amassing because of the tax cuts. We're not going to be able to afford it, but no one's going to be out to kill it.
Well, based on the congressional ads that we've been seeing, the campaign ads that we've been seeing, I have to guess that health insurance is polling at a pretty high level, because that's been, I know, in one of our local races, that's certainly been the theme on the Democratic side. And when people lose something, that's when they start getting really, really upset. So.
But I think also, just think about the message that the Republicans have and with Donald Trump. We've created jobs. The economy is the best economy ever in the history of the economy of America. We also got the Supreme Court justice that you wanted to keep this country conservative for years. So how are the Democrats going to message against that, Mr. Tritico?
I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I also heard, and I don't know if there's any truth to it because I haven't seen the data, but that people are very, when they poll on the issue, that people are very supportive of the Affordable Care Act, but they don't like Obamacare.
That's exactly right.
Seriously.
Yeah, they don't understand. They don't understand that it's the same thing.
Well, I have a question for you, Mr. Tritico. Mm-hmm. Is Trump an issue to run on?
It depends. Yes, Trump is an issue to run on, but it has to be smart branding, and it just like Chris Bell just said, people love the Affordable Care Act, they hate Obamacare, and they don't realize it's the same thing. And so, it's like I said about a month ago when we were talking about impeaching Trump, and I said, we cannot run on impeaching Trump. We have to run on the things that Trump is doing that is helpful to the party. If you're running an election saying we're going to impeach Donald Trump, you're going to lose. If we run an election that's saying this is how we can be better than Donald Trump and point those things out, that's how you win.
Well, and I think the real test case is going to be here in Texas, because Beto O'Rourke has made it a point not to run against Donald Trump and not to run against Ted Cruz, but to run with a very positive message. And if it works, I think a lot of people are going to be pointing to that as the way to go going forward.
And I think Beto is banking on the fact that Ted Cruz lost so much political capital that people don't like him anyway.
Right, and the same with Trump, that he doesn't have to. He's not the one who has to spread that message.
Right.
When people have already adopted it.
Well, I think that playbook has already been played. I think John Kasich ran on that, and he didn't win as a Republican candidate in the primary.
Well, that was a totally different race, though.
Oh, well, he tried to run a positive. I'm not Donald Trump, and he didn't even mention. All he talked about was what he was going to do. Right. And I don't know that is a winning playbook or not.
I think that you don't have to have a message around Trump. If who doesn't feel some kind of way about Donald Trump today? And I think that we're just wasting a lot of time and energy if we're just going to talk about Trump. I mean, he's in the news every day. Right. Everybody knows who he is.
And he's a master of manipulating the news.
Yes.
So I just don't think that's the winning strategy. All right, let's go on to the Supreme Court just for a little bit. We're almost out of time anyway. This second topic, the political court. The process of advice and consent has become a very partisan function, as we just saw. And I just did a little research. The 60-vote rule ensured that the Senate came together on the confirmation of judges, and the 60-vote rule went all the way down to administrative appointments. It ensured that judges were down the middle and free to act like judges. This dated back to 1841. And in 1841, it took 67 judges, and in 1917 they changed it to 60 votes, and it stayed that way until when? Did anybody know?
No.
Harry Reid changed it, and I said at the time this is a huge... Harry Reid, know what I said? Harry Reid changed it, And when the Republicans were blocking all of Obama's judicial appointments, and Harry Reid changed it for lower courts, district courts, and appellate courts judges, because the Republicans were blocking all of them and not allowing Obama to appoint any judges. So he changed it. And I said at the time, this is a huge mistake. We should just allow them to keep blocking it and run campaigns on this, because this is going to come back to haunt us. And here we are. Here we are. And now we have a Supreme Court that the Republicans jammed down our throat, and they changed this. And they changed it with Neil Gorsuch. Now we have Kavanaugh. And the only person left, in my view, who can become that person who stops the court from running wild is Chief Justice John Roberts, who's done it one time when he saved the Affordable Care Act. It was going to be held unconstitutional, and he changed his vote.
Well, he voted for same-sex marriage, too.
Did he? Uh-huh. Okay. Well, I only remember the Affordable Care Act, but he was going to be held. He was going to vote to hold it unconstitutional until Kennedy said he was going to do it, and then he changed his vote to make him the swing vote to keep it from being held unconstitutional.
Well, and I think he'll probably continue in that direction. And Kavanaugh could have been a surprise if we hadn't gone through this maelstrom that we've experienced the last few weeks. He clerked for Kennedy, and chances are he could have built up a much more conservative record as a district court judge in order to be considered for the Supreme Court, and then track back toward the way of Anthony Kennedy, since that was sort of his mentor in many respects. And it sounded like there was a possibility for that, but now, given what has transpired, he might be the most political justice on there.
How do people ever have faith in the Supreme Court from this day forward when it's become such a partisan?
Well, has anyone since 2000 and
the Republicans are going to have a lot of faith in it.
Yeah. So, there's a history of Republican presidents appointing justices, and I think of Lewis Powell and Potter, who were both appointed by Republican presidents and became moderating forces on a court that was, fairly liberal. And so you may have a Justice Roberts or another one of the Republican appointees. I don't have any faith in what's his name? God, he escapes me.
Clarence Thomas.
Clarence Thomas. He's not even I don't even think about him.
Neil Gorsuch.
Ever.
But he could have a real
Gorsuch may be becoming moderating forces because
he hasn't shown it yet.
We'll see.
But you don't know. Clarence Thomas could go to a Dale Carnegie course, actually learn to speak, and then decide he really wants to say something.
Yeah, he finally started asking questions.
He did ask 2 questions last term.
I know, we're edging that direction.
But I'm okay. This is where I put my faith in the American Constitution and the integrity of our institutions. And I'm hoping that these people who were appointed by Donald Trump will go against the grain. I don't know that that's going to happen. I'm just saying that if they see that the pendulum is swung so far over to injustice, then maybe they'll swing it back. But I don't know. It remains to be seen. We'll see. They have some cases coming up on Planned Parenthood and abortion rights and voting rights. And so we'll see. They'll be put to the test pretty soon.
I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing that with Kavanaugh.
Well, we don't know.
We don't know.
Because Susan Collins doesn't think he's going to
Susan Collins said she has every faith he will not vote to overturn Roe versus Wade.
Yeah.
And she may believe
We had every confidence that Susan Collins would not vote to confirm Brett Kavanaugh.
We had some confidences, yeah. Look, I think that Brett Kavanaugh showed his true self in his opening statement and in his responses to Democrats during that hearing. He was disrespectful, this very angry, sniveling, crying, I feel sorry for myself, my children, why didn't he just, if he had shown even the slightest little bit of honesty and said, he showed absolutely no sympathy whatsoever for Dr. Ford. And I think that that would have just been a start. Just show a little bit of sympathy, a little humanity. But then when he said, what goes around comes around.
Did he say that?
He said that. I don't know if that is a quote. I'm going to look that up right now. In my mind, that's what he said, but I'm going to look it up just for accuracy's sake.
Okay. I'm not arguing with you. I just don't remember.
Disqualified himself for a seat on the Supreme Court. Be that as it may, he is not the person, he is not the thoughtful person who has shown at any point during his long career on the bench.
You don't see him writing an opinion like Marbury versus Madison or...
he may write some groundbreaking opinion, but it may be something that we don't want to live under.
It will be interesting because, I brought up facetiously Clarence Thomas, but he went on the court under this cloud. And has basically been like a piece of furniture since he got there, basically.
Except for the fact that his rulings, furniture doesn't have a vote.
Right.
And yes.
And so they obviously make a difference because he's always with the conservative majority. And it'll be interesting to see if Kavanaugh tries to rise above this ugliness by actually showing his independence or moxie as a judge or what have you, or if he'll be under a cloud as well.
His long history does not bode well for that optimistic outlook.
Well, we'll see. All right, let's move it out of left field. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. So this week, a reporter and photographer in Minnesota was fired for wearing a Make America Great Again hat, and he deserved to be fired because he was at a campaign rally for Donald Trump. And even though Donald Trump demonizes the media and calls them evil and largely liberal, nobody's wearing caps saying, I hate Donald Trump. You can't come to a rally for Donald Trump as a reporter and wear a hat like that. I once wrote a column in the Houston Chronicle where George Bush and John Kerry came to the National Association of Black Journalists Convention, and every time Bush spoke, he was booed, and every time John Kerry spoke, he was cheered. And I wrote a column, it remains to be said that there should be no cheering in the press box. And at that event, those reporters, those journalists at that event were clearly partisan towards John Kerry. I took him to task for doing that. And this reporter, I don't like to see reporters get fired, but in this instance, that news director did the right thing in getting rid of him.
Agreed. I want to recommend a book called The Fifth Risk, and I think that I have not started it, but he's a great writer, whip smart guy, and The Fifth Risk is the book that he wrote after looking into who is running the government right now. He went in, yes, I'm getting big thumbs up all around and nods, so, well, that's an endorsement in and of itself. Just basically, the fifth risk is that risk you haven't thought about. And he's making the case for the incompetence of the people that Donald Trump has put in charge of the various like departments that run the government. Enough said about that. Michael Lewis is his own endorsement.
All right, so I'm going to lighten up a little bit this week. My out of left fields are always too emotional, so I want to talk. You always hear about in commercials. Always talk about the men in the world hogging the remote, and I don't know if this is true in every home, but in my home, my wife is a remote hog, and I'm sick of it. It drives me crazy.
She hogs the remote.
Yes, and she hogs the remote, and not only that, she backs the damn thing up on commercials, and it's driving me. Stop it! I don't want to see a commercial again. The reason they invented the DVR DVR is so you don't have to watch the damn commercials.
She rewinds.
Rewinds so we can watch. Did you see that? That was funny. And we have to watch the damn commercial again. I don't want this. Give me the remote and leave me alone. Stop it. That's my out left field.
Okay, we've been talking a lot about things that happen for an audience of one. I think that was for Deb.
Couple of things. We still have Ted One-Term Cruise bumper stickers left. If you can contact us at what'sleftamerica.com, we will try to send one your way. It's the Thinking Man's Beto O'Rourke bumper sticker and really looks good on the back of any vehicle. If you don't believe it, just look at mine. And then lastly today, almost every week, James Campbell talks about how he no longer believes in polls, how he's lost confidence in polling. Well, I just want to point out that this year marks the 20th anniversary for the discovery of Viagra. And this year it will become
what do polls show about Viagra?
It will become a generic
4 hours.
It will become a generic drug, and there is a new app called Roman where people can just order the generic Viagra and have it delivered right to their doorstep without having to visit a doctor's office or anything else. And I think because of this discovery that's one blue wave that's going to continue in America. And it has given millions of men much more confidence in polling.
That's all the time we have. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and please rate us on iTunes. More important than that, we need you to subscribe. Have a subscription party. Ask 3 friends to subscribe to What's Left America. Go to Libsyn or your favorite podcasting site and do what, Andy?
Subscribe.
Much thanks to Keegan DeLeo, our in-studio producer. Have a great week.